See, the problem is that mindset is born and comes from scarcity, of lack, of fear, of doubt. And that kind of savings mindset is people don't actually save themselves rich, yet if they live that way, they miss out on living wealthy. And Benjamin Franklin said, wealth isn't the man that has it, but the man that lives it. I look the financial part, long hair and all that kind of stuff. Don't tuck in my shirt, because most of finance is really a load of crap when it comes down to it. I mean, I'm sure you guys have been shoveled the whole notion of if you just save enough money, sacrifice, scrimp, save, defer, delay, one day, someday, you can have this, pile of money in the stock market. But the problem is the stock market has overpromised and underperformed for the majority of people. We did a study, and when I say we have two kind of full-time guys, and one of them, Steven, went and did this research where he said, all right, what's the stock market actually done between the year 2000 and the year 2015, and we adjust it for inflation, which, by the way, what do they say the stock market averages? 8% since 2000 BC or some nonsense like that, right? So what we found is 8% was accurate. It was 8.4% total over that period of time. So that isn't really going to get people too far ahead. And the matter of fact is that you have a business that should far exceed and outperform any of that. And a business is something that you understand, that you relate to, yet at the same time, you're supposed to take money from that business and set it into investments that are highly speculative, that are hard to understand when they're going to pay off, how they're going to work, why they would earn a rate of return, how you're going to benefit from them, yet that's what people are sold all day long. Now, the other thing that we're sold, and I'm sure you've heard it, is to live within your means, right? Everyone's hard to live within your means? When I submitted that for the title, Yannick denied it. He said that no one would show up, right? Because that's a pretty painful notion, live within your means. What do you think about doing with that? Cutting back, restriction. And here's the deal, no one shrinks their way to wealth. So if you start thinking in a reductionist mindset, it actually limits wealth, not grows it. But living within your means is good advice from the standpoint of you shouldn't spend a whole bunch more money than what you make and end up in a train wreck type of situation. But the thing is, what I want to focus on today is a different way to live within your means, to be more efficient within your means, to find money and reclaim money that's rightfully yours, especially considering, I think, one of the major dangers to all entrepreneurs as we move forward is that there's this ridiculously massive deficit. And we can watch the news and get all depressed about that because, it is kind of frustrating, or we could do something different, which is take some action where you can be really proactive around your taxes. And when they inevitably increase taxes, which, by the way, anyone think they're lowering taxes in the near future by a show of hands, right? So, and right now we're at a historical low, by the way. Since the tax code came out in 1913, what do you think the average top rate has been? 67%. It's at 40% right now. So there's a lot of people that are deferring taxes into a future where they're going to just get hit with major taxes. So I'd rather save you things than just have you delay things. So this will probably be different advice than a lot of your accountants have given you up until this point. And my objective is to make sure to give you things that you can put on the ground and implement immediately, whether you ever talk to us again or not, whether you ever see me again or not. I want to make sure to give you a framework that in understanding this framework, you can avoid the two major tax traps that most people fall victim to. And these tax traps absolutely are going to confiscate your wealth over time. But then I'm going to give you the three-part framework of how you could save a massive amount of taxes. And had lunch today with Ryan Lebesk. He's in the program, so I was telling him about some things he could do to cut some of his taxes in half. I was talking to, Pete Vargas was at that table. We're talking about taxes. I mean, I know that's not an exciting topic for a lot of people, but I think keeping a bunch of money, and if I could simplify the tax thing for you, because there's 77,000 supporting pages and documents around the tax code, and that's why 93% of entrepreneurs overpay on their taxes. First of all, you might have this entrepreneurial disease called, I'll just earn more. Anyone ever thought that? I'll just earn my way out of that, right? And that's kind of like that proverbial treadmill. You get on and you run faster, you run harder. But if you have a whole bunch of leaks and you're disorganized in your finances, more money, as the poet laureate Biggie Smalls said, more problems, right? More money, more problems. So I want to make sure that if there's more money, there's more that you keep. And the more that you make, there's an exponential amount that you get to keep. So that's why we're going to emphasize and focus a little bit on the second way to live within your means, which is to be efficient within your means. Just to have efficiency. Optimize your cash flow. Then the third way to live within your means, I think, is the most critical thing, and it's probably why you're here in the first place. and that's to continually expand your means. Play a value creation game where you can impact people at a deeper way, or that you can impact more people, therefore making more money, because dollars follow value. So the more value you can offer in the world, the more money you're gonna make. And really, there's kind of a framework out there that leads towards economic independence. So what I mean by economic independence is when you have enough investment income and some entrepreneurial income. The problem with entrepreneurial income is it's awesome, but it still does take quite a bit of a management, even if it's not you directly responsible for it. But it's still, if you can have income that comes in, even if you don't show up to the office or the basement for some of you, working in your underwear or whatever it is, that happens with internet marketers at times. But if you look at that and say, if you could create recurring revenue as the objective, recurring revenue to cover your basic expenses in life, that's economic independence. And why that's a really critical state to be in is if you can create that economic independent situation, that means every dollar you earn above and beyond your recurring revenue that doesn't cover your expenses isn't encumbered by lifestyle and go towards building assets. That's where exponential growth exists. Exponential growth doesn't exist in compound interest, even though I know you've been taught and trained that compound interest is some magical thing. Hell, it takes 30 years for it to ever kick in. I mean, how many people do you know, other than the financial institutions, that are rich because of compound interest? I remember Coach Dupin in junior high, man. I think he's rich because of compound interest, but at the same time, he still has the first dollar he ever made. He walked around this little small coal mining town I grew up in his cowboy boots everywhere around town, has the first vehicle that he ever bought that never drives anywhere because he probably have to put gas in it and that would cost him some money, and lives in the same little house that you could probably buy for 20 grand. And I think that he's probably doing okay because of compound interest, because he never utilized his money. And yet I think much of what you've been told is almost to make you feel guilty, like you should have started earlier, you should have saved more money earlier on, but you built a business. That is a huge advantage. As a matter of fact, 91% of people worth $5 million or more have one thing in common. I guess more than one, because they're human beings and they're alive. But they all own a damn business. And so all these financial books that you go out there and you read, they miss the most major component of what drives and generates wealth. I know that they want you to believe investing is synonymous with the stock market, and for some people it is, but for 90+% of the population, they don't even know what's going on in the stock market. They don't study it. As a matter of fact, I'm in the world of finance and I have no money in the stock market because the stock I care about are the businesses that I'm involved in. And then I have a basic infrastructure I called cash flow banking that I learned by studying what the Rockefellers do, and I wrote a book called What Would the Rockefellers Do? I'll make sure to just give you guys a free copy, because if you go to buy it on Amazon, it's $1,000, because I don't want financial advisors buying it and bastardizing what I'm teaching here. So I just want to give it directly to people instead of advisors. And it just makes it seem more valuable if I put $1,000 up on Amazon. You're like, oh, shit, this is a good book. It's $1,000. I mean, that's just a book, right? Yes, it's a book, but it's so valuable, because here's the premise of that book. Cornelius Vanderbilt had more money than the U.S. Treasury at one time. He died, and 54 years later, the first Vanderbilt died broke. So the Vanderbilt fortune has been absolutely decimated because they didn't understand how to translate and transfer wealth. As a matter of fact, most people never make it past the third generation, yet the Rockefellers are on their sixth generation of passing on wealth. They still donated $50 million to charity last year, and the net worth is growing, not diminishing. So I thought that would be something worthwhile to study. And what I realized is when it comes to the poor, the middle class, and even the working wealthy like entrepreneurs, a lot of times entrepreneurs have most of their wealth inside of their business, and therefore they miss out on how they can really build and sustain and pass on wealth, because they don't take time to think about that, because they're thinking about how to make more money. So first of all, if I can help them keep more money, but number two, if you could learn some of the Rockefeller method and their methodology, I think it'll help you leave more money behind, and not just behind, but live better along the way. Because a lot of people, early on in my life, I kind of read The Millionaire Next Door. Anyone read that book, Millionaire Next Door? If you haven't read it, this is the spoiler alert. If you're willing to be a miserable human being that never spends any money your whole life, you can die with millions of dollars, but live broke, all right? It's kind of like Ebenezer Scrooge before the three ghosts, It's like if you just drive a vehicle that's a jalopy that you hate, and if you just never buy anything new, You can pinch pennies till you get blisters on your fingers and tell people you're a millionaire because they would never know it by knowing you. You ever have friends that are like that? Hell, I have a friend in Vegas that's like that. I don't even know that we're friends anymore because I'm not gonna go visit him because I remember we pulled onto the freeway and like his hubcap starts rolling out and it's probably gonna kill someone on the freeway. He's got his antenna, which was actually a hanger that was dismantled. And then you get to his house, and Vegas is known to get warm in the summer. Well, it was warmer in his house. I saw he had his thermostat on 87, and I was like, hey bro, if I give you $5, can we turn it down to 70? Like, what would it take? Maybe you can make money on me. I'll pay more than that if we can just get air conditioning working. You know they have that in today's world. So, see, the problem is that mindset is born and comes from scarcity, of lack, of fear, of doubt. And that kind of savings mindset is people don't actually save themselves rich, yet if they live that way, they miss out on living wealthy. And Benjamin Franklin said, wealth isn't the man that has it, but the man that lives it. So I believe that there's a way to live a great life along the way and yet have plenty of money in the future that leads towards sustainable wealth. But a lot of it comes from just basic financial philosophies. It comes from just basic principles that most people never hear about. And the reason is, in the world of finance, they can't sell you these philosophies because it's against how they get compensated. I mean, think about it. In the world of finance, and I'll admit, I was a finance guy, just the normal guy peddling products. I sold mutual funds in 1998, 1999, and life insurance. I told people I was a financial planner because I woke up one day and passed a test, so that apparently made me a financial planner because, you just say it, and then they go, oh, great, And then I sold them the mutual funds, and in 98, 99, in my little hometown, I was like the Doogie Howser, and there might be people that don't remember Doogie Howser, but Doogie Howser, MD, this boy genius, he's a doctor, he's still a teenager. I was that in finance for 2 years until the year 2000 came. And then the market starts going down. And now I'm going to family reunions because, look, I'm a 19 and 20-year-old at the time, so who are my clients? Mom and dad, grandma and grandpa, the parents of my friends that guilt their parents into, hey, you should give Garrett a chance. And I was articulate enough to convince them to hand money over to me. But then I just passed that money on to someone else that I had never met with a bunch of stocks that I had never even known which stocks were being held inside of here, just the top 10, with companies that I'd never been in their boardroom. I'd never read a single damn report. And as a matter of fact, some of them had changed fund managers from the time I originally sold it, but I didn't even know that because I was simply a product peddler because how did I get paid? By transactions. So that's what I did. Until the year 2000 when the market started to go down and you go to family reunions and no longer you Doogie Howser, you're Satan. It's like, hey, what the hell's going on here? And you know what my firms told me to tell everyone? I'm sure you've heard this nonsense. You're in it for the long haul. That is the ultimate statement to say, hell, I'm not responsible, no one's responsible. Because when does the long haul end? Yeah, never. I guess when you die, but then someone else inherits at that point, right? Like, that's a horrible notion. Or have you ever heard the market's on sale? Yeah, that's a crappy sell if you've already bought, by the way. Or dollar cost average. You heard the notion dollar cost average? Are you guys here because you want to be average? Show of hands, you came here to be average. I mean, they're even marketing that it's an average strategy. And not even average, that's just what they say. And the word average is so misleading because let's just think about it. In the world of finance, this is part of the reason I got kicked off CNBC. Yannick said I was on CNBC. That was a one-time gig, and the show finished, and I've never heard anything again. Because apparently, if you tell people not to put money in the market, and then they cut to the commercial of people throwing rocks on a beach while they drink Corona till their livers give out, that's not what they want to hear. But the good news is ABC let me do 13 different segments, and the people interviewing me actually changed their opinion over time. Because the first time I was on, they thought I was joking with some of my advice because I said people should stop contributing to their retirement plans. And they're like, wow, we don't usually get that kind of advice. I'm like, I know people are struggling massively with the kind of advice that they've been getting, right? So that's just useless facts for you right there, all right? Really important for you guys to know all this kind of stuff. But what I was talking about is the term average is misleading. It's a marketing term in the world of finance. So let's say you have 100 grand and you lose 10%. I know heavy math here, right? I think we can all do this. What ends up after that? Lose 10% of 100 grand? 90 grand, right? Now, you just hear on the news, the market has rallied. It's come back. It's back up 10%. What's your 90 grand at? 99. But as they're saying, your average is 0% at that point. But you're actually down. You've actually lost. Plus they took out fees because they don't forgive those fees when they don't perform, right? So average is pretty misleading. You know, like you could be standing in a shower with 2 shower heads, turn one to freezing cold, the other one to scalding hot, and on average you're at a cool temperature, right? Averages are just misleading, that's the bottom line. And there's a lot of that misinformation that gets people to stay invested. And you know, look, we should all be so lucky to have the kind of retention rates as financial planners. 8 years. Can you imagine keeping a customer without much effort for 8 years? I mean, why? Because they have the fees come out without having to write a check. Think about it. When you got robbed in the old days, they showed up on horses. They had guns. It's like, oh shit, we just got robbed. Now it just automatically comes out of your account. And you're like, what happened to my money? And they're like, oh, we only charged you 0.85%, less than 1%. Oh, really? Let's just calculate that really quick. $100,000 invested over 30 years, and they show a 10% rate of return, which isn't going to happen, but they'll show it, grows to $1.74 million. That's exciting, right? Until you take out the 0.85%, it only grows to $1.4 million. So it's a $340,000 cost to you. So once again, we got to be careful with being misled by all the money that goes into convincing us to separate ourselves from our money simply in the name of having a better future that for far too many people they never experience.